It was a cold evening in Winterfell, snow falling gently over the castle walls. The wind howled like a lonely wolf, but inside the great hall the fire burned warm. Jon Snow sat near it, silent as always, his eyes fixed on the flames. He didn't expect what was coming that night. Lord Eddard Stark, Ned, walked in with heavy steps, his face serious. He was a man who rarely showed emotion, but tonight there was something different in his eyes. He looked older, not just from age, but from the weight he carried inside. "Jon," he said, standing near him, "walk with me." Without a word, Jon stood and followed his father, or so he thought. They walked through the quiet halls of Winterfell, passing the sleeping direwolves and guards, who bowed as they passed. The night was calm, but Jon could feel tension in the air, like the moment before a sword fight. They stopped at the godswood, beneath the heart tree, its red leaves dancing in the wind. The old gods were watching. Ned turned to him. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago." Jon's heart skipped. He had waited for this moment for years. The truth about his mother, about who he really was. But Ned didn't start with that. "Not yet. You've been loyal, Jon, strong, kind. Even though you never carried the Stark name, you've always acted like one." Jon looked down. "I've tried, Father, I know. And that's why I want you to stay here, in Winterfell." Jon's eyes widened. "Stay? But I'm going to the Wall, to the Night's Watch." "I know. That was the plan. But things have changed." Jon was silent, confused. Ned continued, "I want you to inherit Winterfell, Jon. I want you to become the next Lord Stark." The words hit him like a hammer. Jon shook his head. "But I'm a Snow, I'm not a true Stark. Robb is your heir." Ned looked pained. "Robb is strong and I love him. But he has Catelyn's heart, and she will guide him south when I'm gone. He's not meant for the north." "You are." Jon couldn't believe it. "You're not serious?" "I've never been more serious," Ned said. "I don't know how much longer I'll be here. The king is coming to Winterfell. He wants me to go south, to serve as Hand of the King. If I leave and something happens to me, I need to know that Winterfell will be in safe hands. But Lady Stark, she'll never accept me," Ned sighed. "That may be true. She has her reasons, but this is not her decision. It's mine, and I trust you." Jon's mind raced. All his life he had felt like an outsider, like a shadow in his own home. Now Ned was offering him the very thing he never thought he could have: family, legacy, honor, but the Night's Watch. He whispered. "You don't owe them anything yet," Ned said softly. "You've taken no vows. You still have a choice." Jon stared at the heart tree, snow landing on his shoulders. A crow called in the distance. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was standing on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. "If I do this," he said slowly, "if I stay, I'll need your name, your word. Not as a Snow, but as your son." Ned hesitated, the weight of years pressing on him. "You are my blood, Jon, that I promise." "But who was my mother?" Silence. Ned looked away, pain in his eyes. "One day I will tell you, but not tonight." Jon wanted to argue, but he saw how deeply it hurt Ned. He nodded instead. "All right, I'll stay." A slow breath left Ned's lips, relief mixed with sadness. "Thank you, Jon." They stood in the godswood, the snow falling around them. Two men bound by duty, secrets, and blood. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Jon Snow felt like he belonged. He didn't know what was coming, how the South would pull Ned into danger, how war would soon arrive at their gates, and how the truth about his birth would burn everything they thought they knew. But for now, Winterfell had a new heir, and the North would never be the same. The morning after their talk, Jon woke up before the sun. His breath fogged the air as he stepped outside his room, the cold biting at his face. But something had changed in him. For the first time, the cold didn't feel so sharp. He walked the halls of Winterfell not as a ghost in the shadows, but as someone who had a place. He was no longer just Ned Stark's bastard. He was the future Lord of Winterfell. At least that's what his father had said. But the walls of the castle didn't change for him overnight. The looks from some of the guards, from Maester Lewin, even from Lady Stark, They reminded him that promises and reality weren't the same thing. At breakfast, the table was tense. Catelyn Stark sat at the far end, her eyes hard as ice when they landed on Jon. She said nothing, but her silence was louder than shouting. Robb sat beside her, his expression unreadable, torn between brotherhood and confusion. Sansa barely glanced at Jon, her mind clearly on Prince Joffrey and Queen's courts and silk dresses. Arya, however, grinned at him. She always liked Jon best. Ned entered late, his face set like stone. He looked at Catelyn for a long second before he spoke. "I've decided Jon will stay in Winterfell. He will not join the Night's Watch." Catelyn's spoon clattered against her bowl. "You promised—" "I made no vow," Ned interrupted calmly but firmly. "And I've changed my mind." Robb looked between them, his brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" Ned looked at Jon now and then back at the others. "It means, Robb, Jon will be my heir." The room froze. Even Arya, wide-eyed, sat back in silence. Sansa gasped. Catelyn went pale. Robb stood up, his voice shaking. "You mean instead of me?" "You'll always be my son, Robb," Ned said carefully. "But this isn't just about blood. It's about the North, about what's best for Winterfell." Robb stared at him, betrayed. "You think he's better than me?" "No, I think he is meant for this, and you. I believe your path lies elsewhere." Jon sat there, stiff and silent. He didn't want this kind of attention. He didn't want to take anything from Robb, but now it was too late. Robb stormed out without another word. Sansa followed. Arya stayed, looking between her parents. Lady Stark stood slowly, her voice low, sharp like broken glass. "You shame me, Ned, and you shame our children." Ned didn't answer. She turned and left, her footsteps echoing like thunder. Jon remained seated, a knot in his stomach. He felt more alone now than ever. He had thought being named heir would bring him closer to the family, but it had only pushed him further away. Later that day, he found Robb training in the yard, slamming his sword into a practice dummy as if trying to kill it. Jon stood by the fence, silent. Robb finally turned. "Come to take the rest of my life too?" "That's not fair," Jon said. Robb walked closer, his face red with anger. "No? You think I haven't seen the way he looks at you? You think I don't notice how everyone whispers now? You were always the bastard, Jon. Now suddenly you're better than all of us." Jon stepped forward. "I didn't ask for this, but you didn't say no either," Robb snapped. Jon didn't reply. They stood there, and brothers torn apart not by swords, but by a few simple words from their father. Robb turned and walked away again. "Enjoy your castle, Lord Snow." The name stung more than Jon expected. That night Ned visited Jon in his chambers. "I'm sorry," he said, seeing the look on Jon's face. Jon shook his head. "They all hate me now. Maybe I should have gone to the wall." "No," Ned said. "Winterfell needs you. The North needs someone who understands honor and duty, not just names and blood." Jon sat quietly. "You're hiding something from me." "About my mother." Ned looked down. "I am. Why?" "Because the truth could destroy you, and perhaps the North too." Jon's heart beat faster. "Then maybe I need to hear it." Ned placed a hand on Jon's shoulder. "When I return from King's Landing, I'll tell you everything." He said it with the weight of finality, as if he knew he might never come back, but neither of them could imagine how true that would be. Outside the walls of Winterfell, wheels were already turning. The South would soon pull Eddard Stark into a web of lies, betrayal, and blood. And here in the North, Jon's inheritance had made him both a symbol and a target. The bastard had become the heir, and nothing would ever be the same again. Winterfell was colder now, not just from the weather, but from the way people looked at Jon. The news of Ned Stark naming Jon as heir had spread faster than wildfire. Whispers travelled through the halls like rats. Servants paused their work when he passed. Some nodded politely, but others gave him tight, unsure looks. Lords and bannermen who visited Winterfell began to watch him more closely, some with curiosity, others with quiet contempt. And Catelyn Stark? She hadn't spoken to him since the morning of the announcement. One afternoon, Jon stood at the battlements, watching the white horizon. Snowflakes landed softly on his cloak. Ghost sat beside him, silent and alert as always. The wind howled, but Jon was lost in thought. A voice came from behind. "You're not the only one with Stark blood, you know." Jon turned. Theon Greyjoy leaned against the stone wall with his usual smug grin. Theon always had a way of making everything sound like a joke, even when it wasn't. Jon didn't answer. Theon shrugged. "You should be careful. People don't like it when bastards get titles, especially not titles meant for true-born sons." "I didn't ask for this," Jon muttered. "No, but you have it. And that means people will want to take it from you." He gave a slow smirk. "Including some inside these walls?" Jon narrowed his eyes. "You mean Robb?" Theon raised his eyebrows. "I mean whoever thinks they deserve Winterfell more than you. Could be Robb, could be Catelyn, could be someone else entirely." He pushed off the wall. "Watch your back, Snow." Jon stayed silent, but the words stayed with him. Later that day, Maester Luwin summoned Jon to the Solar. He found Sir Roderick Castle and Ned Steward, Vayon Poole, waiting with scrolls and books open. "We thought it best to begin your training," Master Luwin said. "If you are to rule Winterfell, you must understand its lands, its bannermen, and its gold." Jon stepped inside slowly, feeling the weight of it all settle onto his shoulders. He wasn't holding a sword here. He was being handed a kingdom. They showed him maps, taxes, and lists of bannermen. They spoke of House Karstark, House Umber, House Glover, each with their own troubles and politics. Jon tried to focus, but his thoughts wandered. What would they think of him, a Snow ruling from the seat of their ancient kings? That night he walked alone to the crypts. Down beneath the castle, where the dead Starks rested in silence, Jon felt strangely calm. He stopped at Lyanna Stark's statue, staring into her stone eyes. "You must have known things. And weren't always fair either," he whispered. "Didn't notice Arya until she stepped beside him." "They all treat you different now," she said. Jon nodded. "Not sure if it's respect or fear. Maybe both," she shrugged. "Sansa says you'll ruin our family's name. Do you think that too?" Arya looked up at him. "No, I think you'll do what's right. Like father," Jon smiled. It was small, but it was real. Then she said something that made his chest tighten. "You should be careful. I heard Lady Stark talking to Maester Luwin. She doesn't want you here." Jon stared at her. "What did she say?" "She said she'd rather burn Winterfell than see you rule it." Jon looked away, a hard silence wrapping around him. The days that followed were colder still. Catelyn avoided him, but her influence remained. Some knights began to side with Robb more openly now. Even Sir Roderick seemed torn, always careful with his words around Jon. And then came the Raven. Ned Stark had been arrested in King's Landing, accused of treason. The hall erupted into panic. Maester Luwin read the letter aloud before the household. "Lord Eddard Stark has confessed to crimes against the crown. He awaits judgment." Robb stood, his face pale and furious. "That's a lie. My father would never betray the king." Catelyn looked like she'd been punched in the gut. But her eyes quickly turned to Jon. "This is because of you," she hissed, quiet but sharp. "If he hadn't stayed to name you heir, he would have left sooner. He would have escaped this madness." Jon's hands clenched. "You don't know that. I know enough. You were never meant to be here." Robb stepped forward. "We ride to war. We gather our bannermen." He looked directly at Jon. "And I will lead them." Jon stared back. "You think they'll follow you after what father said?" "They don't need his words," Robb said coldly. "I have his blood, and they know me." A silence filled the hall. This was it, a house. Divided, Jon could feel it. The war wasn't just in the south anymore. It had already begun at home. War came to Winterfell, not with fire and swords, but with silence, glares, and doors that no longer opened for Jon Snow. Robb had taken control like a true-born lord. The bannermen arrived one by one, riding under their house sigils, offering fealty to the son of Eddard Stark. They brought swords, soldiers, and hard northern voices ready to bleed for their lord. But when they looked at Jon, they hesitated. Some greeted him as Lord Snow out of forced respect, but most still treated him like the boy he once was, the quiet bastard who belonged in the shadows. Not at the head table. Robb used it to his advantage. He began calling war councils without inviting Jon. When Jon asked to join, Robb would nod, smile politely and say, "Of course." But the next meeting would happen without him anyway. The message was clear: you're not needed here. Catelyn, of course, fanned the flames in the background. Her words were gentle, calculated, and always whispered just loud enough for someone to hear. He's not truly one of us. This isn't what Lord Eddard would have wanted. He's young. Maybe power is too heavy for him. The bannermen began to lean toward Robb. The North needed unity, they said, not confusion. And then came the twist that none of them expected. A second raven arrived. It was short, sealed with a Targaryen sigil. Maester Luwin read it alone first, then brought it to Jon privately. Jon opened it with shaking hands. To Jon Snow of House Stark, rightful son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, you do not know us, but we know you. The truth of your birth was hidden for your safety, but now the truth must be known. The dragon stirs in the east, the wolf in the north. You are both. We will come to you. Keep Winterfell safe. Jon dropped the scroll. His breathing slowed. The words echoed in his. Not Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar Targaryen. He wasn't Ned's bastard. He was the son of a prince and a Stark maiden. He was never a Snow. He was a Targaryen. 1,000 thoughts attacked him at once. His whole life had been shaped by lies. All those stares, all the shame, none of it should have belonged to him. He had royal blood. He was the last living child of a dead dynasty, and the worst part, Ned knew. All this time, his father, uncle, had kept it buried. Jon wanted to scream, but he couldn't. Not yet. That night, Jon met Samwell Tarly near the crypts. Sam had arrived with a black cloak and news from Castle Black. They say war is coming, Sam said nervously. But there's worse things beyond the wall. Dead things, cold things. You need to know this war in the south. It's not the only one, Jon nodded. I believe you. Sam looked at him, studying his face. You've changed. Jon glanced at the raven's message tucked inside his cloak. A lot can change in a few days. But before Jon could say more, horns blasted across Winterfell. A scout came riding fast through the gates. Enemy riders, Lannisters. A small force, but armed and fast. They were here. Jon rushed to the walls as Robb gathered the men. What do they want? Jon asked. To draw blood, Robb replied coldly. They're testing us. Robb was already in armor, barking orders. Jon followed, sword in hand, Ghost at his side. But when Robb saw him, he stepped in his way. Where do you think you're going? Jon looked at him like he was mad. To fight, Robb shook his head. You're not leading my men. Your men? Yes, Robb said firmly. You've caused enough confusion. I won't let you get one of them killed because you think you deserve a crown. Jon's blood boiled. I never asked for this. No, Robb said, voice low. But you didn't walk away either. The gates opened, the riders approached, and the first real battle of the North was at their doorstep. Jon had a choice: obey Robb, stay behind and let the war move without him, or ride anyway, and show the North who he truly was. He looked at Ghost, he looked at the sky, and then he drew his sword. Winterfell would see the truth, whether it liked it or not. Snowstorm or not, the battlefield outside Winterfell turned red before sunrise. Jon didn't wait for Robb's permission. He rode out through the side gate with Ghost racing ahead, his breath misting in the air. A dozen loyal guards followed, not out of duty, but because they believed in Jon. Some were old soldiers who remembered Lyanna Stark's laughter. Some just couldn't stomach how quickly Robb had turned cold. The Lannister raiders were fast, brutal, and merciless. Their sigil flapped in the icy wind, golden lions with blood-stained claws. But they had not expected resistance so soon. Jon hit them like a storm. His sword danced in the snow, cutting through armor and bone. Ghost tore down a man who tried to flank Jon from behind, blood spraying across the white ground. Jon didn't fight like a lord. He fought like a man who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. When Robb arrived with the main force minutes later, the battle was already turning. Jon's group had taken down at least half of the Lannister scouts, By the time the rest of the Stark forces surrounded the raiders, the lion banners were burning. It was a victory, but not for Robb. That night back in Winterfell, the great hall buzzed. Men spoke of Jon's bravery, of how the bastard lord had led the first charge. They compared him to Ned, even to Lyanna and Robb. He sat at the high table, jaw tight, eyes cold, drinking slowly while the praise circled the room. Catelyn sat beside him, fuming in silence. Jon entered the hall without a word, armor blood-stained, face unreadable. Ghost padded behind him, red around the mouth. The cheering quieted as Jon walked in. Robb stood. A bold move, he said loud enough for all to hear. Charging out on your own. Jon met his eyes. We won, didn't we? Yes, we did, Robb said sharply. But don't mistake chaos for leadership. Jon didn't respond. The room tensed. Catelyn stood now. You endangered this castle with your recklessness. A true lord would have waited for his commander. Jon laughed once under his breath. You mean your son? Catelyn's face darkened. Don't forget your place, Jon. That was it. Jon reached into his cloak and pulled out the sealed raven scroll. I received a letter, he said, voice steady. A message bearing the seal of House Targaryen. It confirms what Lord Eddard kept hidden for years. He looked around the hall, letting every word hang heavy. I am not Ned Stark's bastard. I am Jon Targaryen, son of Prince Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. Gasps filled the room like a sudden storm. Even Robb took a step back. Catelyn's face turned pale, like a woman seeing a ghost. Maester Luwin moved quickly to examine the letter. His hands trembled. This seal, the handwriting. This is no forgery, Jon continued, his voice calm. Ned kept the secret to protect me. From Robert Baratheon. From all of you, whispers grew louder. He's a Targaryen, Lyanna's son. Then he's not a Snow at all. Jon stepped forward. That makes me the last male heir of House Targaryen. And the son of a Stark. The room was silent again. Robb's eyes burned with disbelief. And what now, Jon? You want to wear a crown? I want what was promised to me, Jon said. Winterfell, Robb's voice cracked like a whip. You think these lords will follow a Targaryen? After what your father did to the north? Jon didn't blink. These lords followed a Targaryen once. They bent the knee to Aegon the Conqueror. They'll bend the knee again if they believe in justice. A deep voice interrupted them. Was Lord Greatjanumber, a mountain of a man with a voice like thunder. I don't care if your name's Stark or Targaryen, he said, standing. You led men today. You bled for the north. That's more than I can say for some other lords. A few other bannermen murmured in agreement. Catelyn turned to the Umber Lord. He's a threat to your families, to your traditions, but the damage was done. The hall had shifted. Jon didn't need every bannerman. He only needed enough. That night, Jon stood alone in the Godswood again. Snow fell heavier now, the branches weighed down like tired old soldiers. Ghost sat at his feet, silent, watching. A war was coming, not just against the Lannisters, not just against the dead things in the north, but against his own blood. He was a Targaryen, a Stark, and something in between, and that meant he belonged nowhere. But maybe he could rule everywhere. 3 days later, Winterfell was a forge of fire and fear. Jon stood atop the battlements, looking down as new men arrived, some riding under familiar northern banners, others under no banner at all. Mercenaries, sellswords, exiles. Word of his true parentage had spread faster than wildfire across the north. Some came to see the Targaryen boy with Stark blood. Others came to judge him. A few came to kill him. Jon felt the weight of every stare. In the courtyard below, Robb trained with Ser Rodrik, hammering a wooden sword against a post like it had insulted his honor. His swings were hard, angry, unrefined. He hadn't spoken to Jon since the hall. Not a word, not even a look. Jon couldn't blame him. He hadn't just challenged Robb's birthright. He had shattered it. Behind him, the door creaked. Maester Luwin entered, holding another scroll. Jon sighed. More ravens. Luwin nodded. 2, one from Riverrun, one from Dragonstone. Jon raised a brow. Dragonstone? Yes, signed by Daenerys Stormborn. She knows about you. Jon took the scroll carefully, eyes narrowing as he read. To Jon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and rightful heir to the north, you are blood of my blood. I do not ask for your loyalty, only your truth. I offer alliance, not war. Let fire and ice stand together before the world burns." Jon read the message 3 times. It was calm, respectful, dangerous. Daenerys was no fool. She wanted to test him, see if the boy hidden in Winterfell was a threat or an ally. Maester Luwin spoke softly. "This changes the game," Jon nodded. "She has dragons. She has armies, followers, power. And I have a castle full of people who think I'm cursed." A beat of silence. "Some think you're the future," Luwin said carefully. "And futures are always feared." Later that evening, Jon called a private meeting in the old war room. Only 5 men were invited. Lord Umber, Lord Glover, Maester Luwin, Sir Roderick, and Samwell Tarly, who had stayed longer than planned. Sam spread maps across the table. "The Night's Watch is barely holding the wall," he said. "Dead men walk beyond it. Creatures we can't fight with swords alone," Lord Umber scoffed. "Ghost stories. They're real," Sam insisted. "I've seen them." "Jon's seen them too." Jon stepped forward. "And if we're still fighting each other when they arrive, the North will fall," Glover grunted. "So we just accept a Targaryen as our lord?" Jon met his eyes. "I'm not asking for blind loyalty. I'm asking for unity. When the wall breaks, banners won't matter. Words are cheap," Lord Glover said. "What makes you different from Robb?" Jon didn't hesitate. "I know what it means to bleed for people who hate you. I know what it's like to carry a name you didn't choose. But I never turned away from the North. Even when the North turned from me." Silence. Then Lord Umber nodded once. "That'll do." Outside, another storm rolled in. Snow fell heavier now. Winter was no longer coming. It had arrived, but inside the castle, a different storm was brewing. Catelyn Stark had called her own council. In the smaller dining hall, she met with loyal bannermen, those who still saw Jon as a threat. "We cannot allow a Targaryen to rule Winterfell," she said, voice calm but sharp as a blade. "He is a symbol of everything the North has fought against. Yet he carries Stark blood," one of the lords replied. "Bastard blood," she snapped. "Do you truly believe Lyanna would have shamed her house with a Targaryen's child?" The hall murmured. Lady Stark's poison spread slow, like frost creeping under a door. That night a shadow moved through the crypts beneath Winterfell. Jon came alone. The torch in his hand cast long, flickering shadows along the stone walls. He stopped at Lyanna's statue again. The face carved in stone was soft, peaceful, but Jon's heart burned with questions. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did you leave me in this world without a name?" Footsteps echoed behind him. Robb, he stood at the edge of the crypt, watching. "I came to say goodbye," Robb said quietly. Jon turned. "You're leaving?" "We march south tomorrow. Father needs us." "The North needs to answer." Jon nodded once. "Then take what men you need. You're not coming." Jon looked back at Lyanna's statue. "The war I'm meant to fight isn't down there." Robb hesitated, then stepped forward. "You're still my brother," he said. "Even if everything's different." Jon met his eyes. "I never wanted your place, Robb, only my truth." "I know." They stood in silence. 2 boys turned into men by a crown neither of them asked for, and in that silence, Winterfell held its breath, for the war in the south, the doom in the north, and the dragons rising in the east. Everything was about to collide, and Jon was standing at the center of it all. The raven flew through the night like a shadow with wings, carrying Jon's reply to Daenerys Targaryen. He had kept the message short and cautious. "We share blood, but blood alone does not make peace. I do not kneel. If you wish for alliance, come north. See the threat for yourself." It was a gamble, but Jon had made peace with it. He wouldn't kneel for dragons. He wouldn't kneel for fire. Not until they saw the storm coming from beyond the wall. But before dragons could arrive, betrayal struck from within. It happened just before dawn. Jon woke to the smell of smoke. A fire had broken out in the stables, burning fast and high, consuming hay, horses and men alike. By the time Jon got there, half the structure had collapsed. Flames danced in the early light like red serpents. He grabbed a pail, shouted orders, and helped form a line to put it out. Ghost howled, pawing through rubble to drag a scorched body into the snow. Jon turned the man over. It was one of his guards. Throat slit. Not burned. This wasn't an accident, it was sabotage. As the fire died down, Maester Lewin arrived with a second piece of bad news. The gate guards are missing. 2 more dead. And your war room was broken into. Jon's jaw tightened. What did they take? Lewin swallowed hard. Only one thing. The Targaryen letter. Jon stared at him. Then the traitor is sending it south. That day, the truth of Jon's blood spread beyond the north, carried by secret riders who rode for power, gold or vengeance, River Run, the Eyrie, King's Landing. In less than a fortnight, everyone would know. Back in the Great Hall, tension reached its peak. Catelyn Stark stood before the bannermen with quiet fury in her voice. Are we truly ready to trust a dragon's son with the North? You've seen what Targaryens become, mad kings, tyrants, destroyers. She looked around the room, meeting every eye. He carries dragon blood. That's all that matters. Jon entered the hall mid-speech, cloak dusted with ash, face unreadable. I also carry Stark blood, he said coldly. And you seem to forget that part. The lords fell silent. Catelyn didn't flinch. You shouldn't be here. Neither should the traitor who lit my stables on fire and slit my men's throats. Her jaw tightened. Jon stepped forward. Someone in this room sent a message south, hoping to turn my blood against me, hoping a crown would land on Robb's head. Enough! Robb stood, eyes blazing. You think I'd do that? Jon held his gaze. No, I think someone did it for you. He turned toward Lord Serwyn, a minor bannerman with shifty eyes and too many Lannister coins in his pocket. You left the hall early last night, Jon said. Then your men were seen near the gates. And you received a raven this morning before the smoke even cleared. Serwyn stood, trembling. I don't know what you're talking about. Jon drew Longclaw in one smooth motion and pointed it at the man's chest. Tell the truth, he said. Or die with it, Serwyn's face crumbled. I did it for the realm. The boy's a Targaryen. He's dangerous. He'll bring fire to the north just like the rest of them. Jon stared at him. I would have let you live if you'd confessed before the blood. But you burned my home. You killed my men. He didn't wait for permission. Jon stepped forward and ran him through. Serwyn fell, gurgling in a pool of red. Gasps filled the room. Catelyn looked horrified. Robb didn't move. Jon sheathed Longclaw and spoke without raising his voice. Any man who raises a hand against Winterfell from the shadows will face the light of truth. I'm done proving who I am. He looked around. If you follow me with open eyes. Not as a snow, not as a dragon, but as a man who was raised by the North, and who will die for it. A beat passed. Then Lord Umber stood. The dragon's got wolf teeth. That's enough for me. More voices followed, slowly, then louder. Some still hesitated. But Jon had claimed something deeper than loyalty. He had claimed fearless resolve. That night, a snow blanketed the burnt ruins of the stables. Jon stood alone in the courtyard. Sam joined him, cloak wrapped tight around his round shoulders. You made an example, Sam said quietly. Jon didn't turn. He made it necessary, Sam nodded. And what if Daenerys comes next? With dragons, with armies, what will you do then? Jon looked up at the sky. Then I'll make her choose too. Suddenly, a howl cut through the wind. Ghost stiffened. A raven landed on the wall nearby, its feathers frosted, eyes glowing blue. Jon's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a messenger raven. It was a warning. The dead were coming. Snow fell heavier than ever, blanketing Winterfell in silence. But beneath that silence, something stirred. Something ancient. Something cold. Jon stood at the highest tower, eyes fixed on the horizon. He could feel it, not just in the air, but in his blood. The wall had broken. The White Walkers were coming. The dead no longer needed permission. They would arrive whether Winterfell was ready or not. A soft knock came from behind. Arya entered, her hood soaked with snow. She walked like a shadow, quiet but deadly. They crossed the last hearth, she said. Tormund sent a raven before he fled. They're moving faster than anyone expected. How long? Jon asked. Maybe 2 days, she replied. And maybe less. Jon exhaled slowly. The storm was no longer a threat. It was here. Arya stepped beside him, watching the wind tear across the trees. You ever think about leaving? She asked. Just riding south, letting someone else fight this war? I did, Jon said. But it followed me anyway, Arya smirked faintly. Guess we're all Starks after all. Always dying for someone else's war. Jon didn't reply. He was thinking about the last time he saw his father, how Ned looked at him, full of guilt and love, hiding a truth that was never his to keep. Now Jon carried that truth like armor and like a curse. Later that evening, Daenerys Targaryen arrived, not with dragons, not with armies. She came alone, wrapped in a white fur cloak, face cold but composed, riding a silver mare that steamed with every breath. Her entrance sent shock through Winterfell's gates. The guards didn't know whether to bow or draw their swords. Jon met her in the courtyard. They stared at each other in the falling snow. Two pieces of a shattered history. Face to face. I expected fire, Jon said softly. I expected resistance, Daenerys replied. Jon nodded toward the tower. Come, we don't have much time. Inside the great hall, Daenerys stood beside the hearth as Jon laid out the map of the north. He pointed to the broken line near Last Hearth. They'll be here by dawn. Daenerys studied the map. You've seen them? I've killed one, Jon said. They don't stop. They don't speak. They don't feel. They consume. And your people? She asked. Half of them trust me, he said. The other half still whisper about dragons and madness. She smiled just a little. Then they haven't met me. Jon looked at her. No. But they will. That night, the walls of Winterfell moved like an ant colony. Supplies hauled, spears sharpened, trenches dug, archers stationed. Fire barrels were lined along the outer gates. Dragonglass was distributed to every man and woman willing to fight. Sam, Gilly, and little Sam were sent to the crypts below. So were the old, the sick, and the children. Jon hated that feeling. Burying the living with the dead. It felt like a grave before the fight had even started. In the Godswood, Jon lit a torch and placed it before the heart tree. Father, he said quietly, I'm not the man you raised. I've seen too much, done too much. But I remember your words. He knelt in the snow. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Tomorrow, Jon whispered. I'll swing until my arms fall off if I have to. Behind him, footsteps. He turned Daenerys. She approached slowly, her face softer now. I used to pray under the Red Temple in Bravos, she said. But the gods never answered. I think they were waiting for me to find this place. Jon stood. The old gods are quiet, but they watch. She looked at him long and hard. If I die tomorrow, will they remember me here? They will, Jon said. And if you die... Jon smiled faintly. Then you'd better not. They stood close in the snow. Two children of fire and frost, born into war, broken by fate, drawn together not by love, but by purpose. Before she turned to leave, she paused. You didn't kneel, she said. I never do, Jon replied. She looked back. Just once and smiled. I might like that. When morning came, the horns blew, not once. Not twice, but 3 long, shaking blasts, the same sound the Night's Watch used to signal the unthinkable, the dead. Jon climbed the wall. What he saw made his blood freeze, a sea of bodies, eyes glowing blue, silent and endless. Stretched across the snowy field, they had no banners, they needed none. Jon looked to the sky, no dragons, not yet. He turned to his people, his broken army, his uncertain allies, his frozen north. Hold the line, he shouted. If they break through, we die. If we burn together. Steel clashed. Ghost howled. Arya vanished into the shadows. Daenerys stood beside Jon, her sword drawn, fire in her veins. And then the dead charged, and Winterfell roared back.